This is This Just In, your Party Week announcement segment. I'm your host, Owen Scott. This Just In, Horton never did hear a who. Fake news, your children have been lied to. This Just In, your This Just In weather report. It's pretty nice. This Just In, go to Facebook and join our PAC Online Facebook group so that you too can see Tamara go for walks, Jake play guitar, and Chris do other things. This Just In, Little Jakey refers to the real person and not the puppet. This Just In, and this Just In, and this Just Tin. This Just In. Giving continues to be amazing here at PAC. We deeply appreciate your faithfulness and generosity. If you'd like to continue to give, you can do so at mypac.tv/give. This Just In. I like that Russians call their friends comrade. I would like to be both calm and rad at the same time. This Just In. Sometimes I raise a hallelujah in the presence of a friend. I'm kind of a rule breaker. This Just In. It's Party Week here at PAC, which means that we celebrate our good God who gives us good gifts. While you're at home this morning as we continue to worship, I would love for you to pray our Party Week prayer with us. Why don't you pray this with me? Father, we say thank you to you, the giver of every good and perfect gift. Thank you for the big and small joys in our lives. Thank you for food, music, beauty, and laughter. Thank you for your intention, your salvation, and your future. You are the source and fountain of our joy. It's to you we sing with grateful hearts. Amen. This has been This Just In. I am your host, Owen Scott. Over to you, Jake.
I was buried beneath my shame. Who could carry that kind of weight? It was my tomb till I met you. Oh, I was breathing but not alive. All my failures I tried to hide. It was my tomb till I met you. You called my name and I ran out of that grave, out of the darkness to your glorious day. You called my name and I ran out of that grave, out of the darkness to your glorious day. That I know the old man knew Jesus when I met you. You called my name, I ran out of that grave, your glorious day. Call my name, 'cause I ran out of that grave, out of the darkness to your glorious day. Rescue. My sin was heavy, but chains break at the weight of your glory. I needed shelter, I was an orphan. Now you call me a citizen of heaven. I was broken, you were my healing. Now your love is the air I'm breathing. I have a future, my eyes are open. When you call my name, I ran out of that grave, out of the darkness to your glorious day. Call my name, I ran out of that grave, out of the darkness, your glorious day. Yeah. I can see the promised land. There is pain within the plan. There is victory in the end. Your love is my battle cry. When my fears like Jericho build their walls around my soul. When my heart is overthrown, your love is my battle cry, the anthem for all my life. Every giant will fall, the mountains will move, every chain of the past you've broken into, all the fear, all the lies. We're singing the truth that nothing is impossible with you. There is hope within the fight, in the wars that wage inside. Though the shadows steal the light, your love is my battle cry, the anthem for all my life. Yes, every giant will fall, the mountains will move, every chain of the past you've broken into, all the fear, all the lies. We're singing the truth that nothing is impossible. Every giant will fall, the mountains will move, every chain of the past you've broken into, all the fear, all the lies. We're singing the truth that nothing is impossible with you. No greater name, no higher name, no stronger name than Jesus. You overcame, broke every chain, forever reign, King Jesus. No greater name, no higher name, no stronger name than Jesus. You overcame, broke every chain, forever reign, King Jesus. Every giant will fall, the mountains will move, every chain of the past You've broken into over fear, over lies. We're singing the truth that nothing is impossible. Every giant will fall, the mountains will move, every chain of the past. You've broken into over fear, over lies. We're singing the truth that nothing is impossible with you. Oh, nothing is impossible. Oh, nothing is impossible with you.
Hey everybody, welcome to the sermon portion of our morning. You enjoyed Little Tamara and Anne-Marie and Little Tamara's shrillness of voice and slurring of speech. Welcome to our Father's Day Sunday service. And although it is Father's Day, our topic in the sermon is going to be broader than just Father's Day, although that will be my primary application because it lands that way for a lot of us. When we think about our dads, when we think about the dads that we are, and we're talking about pride, not like the bad kind of pride, but like the pride that you have in somebody. So the ways that you were proud of your dad or the ways that you want your kids to be proud of you. But we're also talking about regret. And again, universal idea, but for us here this morning, my specific application for regret is going to be those things that we've done as dads that we wish we hadn't done, or the things that you remember about your dad that you wish were different. So we're talking about pride, and we're talking about regret, and ultimately, because of who Jesus is, we're coming to a place of good hope with both of those things. When I think about my own dad, and the first time I can remember being proud of him, it's kind of a funny place I go. My dad was king of the sandbox. This is an illustrious title, you understand, to be king of the sandbox. And the sandbox in question, his kingdom, as it were, was between one row of student housing, which was down a hill at Prairie Bible Institute, called the motels. So it just looked like a motel, little row housing. And up the hill a little ways was the other row of houses. So row housing, another motel. So maybe, let's say, 20 families, 20 units in each hotel. And in the middle, motel, and in the middle, you had a communal washroom. Because these dormitories, these family residences, actually didn't have bathrooms. So you would schlep your kids at night and in the morning and whatever to this communal washroom that had laundry, men's and women's facilities, and showers. It was, just kind of reality. And I do remember once, though, my mom decided to give me a bath in the women's side when I was about 4 or 5 years old, just starting kindergarten. And so there was this row of sinks when you walked into the women's washroom, and just little sinks for washing your hands. And then there was a bigger tub at the end of the row, and we're kind of going to sneak me in there for a quick scrub. So I'm sitting in this wash basin, and she must have gone to flip the laundry or something, but I'm sitting there with like these suds, and in walks little Karen from my kindergarten class in the midst of my bath. And little Karen came over and had a conversation with me, and I was rather mortified, as you would be if one of your kindergarten classmates of the female variety, you being of the male variety, came in and had a little conversation with you in the tub. Just outside of this communal bathroom where you could have baths in public was a sandbox. And it wasn't always a sandbox. It was just a playground with swing set, teeter-totter, etc. But then my dad, and I don't quite remember the particulars, built the sandbox. He put the frames up and filled it with sand, which, as it turned out, was quite a prestigious thing on the playground. I remember my friend was the first to bring it up. There was a little kid that we didn't really care for, or at least that my friend didn't care for, playing in the sandbox, and my friend evicted him on the grounds that, and he points at me, his dad is king of the sandbox. Well, I kind of like this, because if dad's king of the sandbox, then I am prince of the sandbox. And so I ruled my little kingdom like a benevolent ruler, discharging favor on my serfs and my peasants, allowing some in the sandbox and others not in the sandbox. Don't remember how it all shook down when that eventually lost its authority. I'm sure at some point my reign ended. But I do remember this sense of pride at like 4 or 5, it's like, yeah, wow, my dad is the king of the sandbox. And so that's pride. Let's call it pride of position. And maybe as a dad, you're trying to get to a place where somebody will be proud of your position. CFO, CEO, manager, whatever it might be. Or when you think of your dad and you're proud, you think of something that he achieved. Let's call that pride of position. And then there's also pride of what we might call performance. And if you're a dad, you will work to try to differentiate yourself from other dads so that you are performing in some way that your kids can be proud of you. Now, not that you have to be the best at something, but you want them to look and say, wow, he's good at this. He can perform in this way. So maybe you've got a knack for mechanics or carpentry or video games, or maybe you go to the gym, or maybe you run marathons, which might have done it today if it hadn't been postponed, because I think the Manitoba Marathon is usually on Father's Day. Whatever it might be, there's some level of performance that you want to achieve so that your kids look at you, and your kids want you to do this. I mean, we save our fathers this way, right? We think of our dads and go, well, he might not have been this, but at least in this way he was, right? And we're talking about performance. So you've got the position pride, you've got the performance pride, and then there's also like the purchase pride or the possession pride. My dad has something. And a lot of this takes the form when we're younger, if you're fortunate enough to have a father, of my dad has this and your dad doesn't, or my dad can beat your dad up, or whatever it might be. So maybe your dad has an amazing car or a cabin, or the biggest TV, or whatever it might be. Your dad has purchased something, possesses something that differentiates them, and you as a child are proud of this. So we've got these different kinds of pride. You've got the pride of position, the pride of performance, and the pride of possession, things that we are striving for as human beings because we want others to be proud of us, specific now to dads, or things that you're looking for in a father that will make you proud. And there's nothing necessarily wrong with position, possession, and performance. It's just an immature form of pride. And you see how immature it is when you realize that it only goes so far. Because those things maybe aren't the place of pride for you with your dad. They're actually the place of regret. Or if you're a dad, they might be the place of regret. Again, I think these are primary, fundamental things for all human beings. Specific this morning, we're just looking at dads. And so as a dad, you go, why did I work so hard? Just to like get that new thing, or to restore that old automobile, or whatever it might have been. Why did I focus so much on that possession at the extent of something, or at the expense of something that really actually mattered? Why did I work so hard to climb the ladder at work at the expense of my family? Or why, right? It's those possession, performance, and the other immature forms of pride that can sabotage our families a little bit and have us being filled with regret. So what we're going to do is we're going to move from those immature forms of regret to more immature forms of pride, to more mature forms of pride. Places where you can invest that you will not regret. And I'm going to make a kind of audacious claim here relatively early on in our message, that what we're talking about here is not minimizing regret. We're actually talking about a regret-free life, which is, as we will see, nothing short of a miracle. You already feel that, but it's a miracle that's offered to you. So let's tune in and let's look at more mature forms of pride. We're going to see them as we get rid of childish things and learn to be men and grow in love. And to take us there, we're going to look at Jesus as he moves towards his greatest act of love on our behalf. In the text that we're looking at, we're getting face to face with the cross. And when you come face to face with the cross, you just have to acknowledge its brutality. It is an instrument of torture meticulously designed to keep a person suffering without dying for as long as you possibly can. Now, presumably in our day and age, with technology, you could enhance that a little bit and make it even more miserable. But back then, this is the best they had. You want to really hurt somebody, you want to send a message to other rebels, you crucify them. Often, when you were crucified, you were hanging there for up to 3 days. This is because you didn't bleed out. You died from exhaustion as you tried to lift yourself up to breathe and then sunk back down. You could not get breath into your lungs unless you put pressure on your arms. But even that, there wasn't a lot of pressure on your arms. You had a little thing to sit on and something to push off of with your feet. So often 2, sometimes 3 days of laborious breath until you eventually, out of exhaustion, suffocate and die. This is why if you read the Gospels, you see that Pilate is surprised because Jesus dies relatively quickly. Also of interest and pertinent to our text, because we'll see that people are hurling insults at Jesus, you may not know how close you could get to a crucified person. Our classical descriptions of crucifixion, we see a hill, especially with Jesus' crucifixion, we see a hill with 3 crosses sort of off on the distance. And if people are close to it, they're at the foot of the cross. They're backed away from it a little bit. It's not like they could reach out and touch his face, let's say. But actually how crucifixion really was, most of the time, they wanted it, the Romans, to be brutal and graphic and literally in your face. And so the person crucified was about at eye level, very close to you. So if you wanted to spit on them, hurl insults at them, you were close enough to do that. Now we have these images in our mind of Jesus, what he's suffering. And so you won't, because of this brutality, necessarily see 2 other types of pride in this text, but they're there. And as we wade through this brutality with a sense of appreciation and mystery and awe, we'll see 2 new ways to be proud, the kind of things that we can strive for that will make people proud of us, and a way to live your life without regrets emerging from this text. Let's take a look. We're in Mark 15 to 16. Jesus at this point, he's already a hamburger, basically. They've just flogged him, which if you've seen Passion of the Christ or any other realistic depiction of what Jesus went through, he's been flogged with a whip with shards of bone in it. His back is shredded up pretty bad. He's already in a really tough state, certainly at a place of shock. The soldiers led Jesus away into the palace, that is the praetorium, and called together the whole company of soldiers. They put a purple robe on him, then twisted together a crown of thorns and set it on him. And they began to call out to him, "Hail, King of the Jews!" Again and again they struck him on the head with a staff and spit on him. Falling on their knees, they paid homage to him. And when they had mocked him, they took off the purple robe and put his own clothes on him. Then they led him out to crucify him. A certain man from Cyrene, Simon, the father of Alexander and Rufus. Pay attention to that verse. We're going to come back to that in a second. With our minds on fathers and sons, I want you to notice something different in that verse. Every other description in the New Testament, when they're specifying who somebody is, the father is the one who gives you the clue who the son is. So James and John, the son of Zebedee. The identity kind of flows from father to son. Here we're identifying the father first by the sons. So it's not it's not Alexander and Rufus, the son of Simon. It's Simon, the father of Alexander and Rufus. There's a reason for that. And we'll get back to that when we're done reading through the rest of this text. Simon from Cyrene was passing by on his way in from the country, and they forced him to carry the cross. Jesus is too exhausted at this point to carry his own cross. Simon is conscripted, cross goes on his back, off they go. They brought Jesus to the place called Golgotha, which means the place of the skull. When they offered him wine mixed with myrrh, that's just sort of to dull the pain, he does not take it. And they crucified him. Dividing up his clothes, they cast lots to see what each would get. It was 9 a.m. when they crucified him. The written notice of the charge against him read, King of the Jews. They crucified 2 rebels with him, one on his right and one on his left. Those who passed by hurled insults at him, shaking their heads and saying, "So, you who are going to destroy the temple and build it in 3 days? Come down from the cross and save yourself." In the same way, The chief priests and the teachers of the law mocked him among themselves. He saved others, they said, but he can't save himself. Let this Messiah, this King of Israel, come down now from the cross that we may see and believe. Those crucified with him also heaped insults on him. Get a sense of the physical pain, the psychological abandonment, the self-discipline of Jesus here to respond in a way that would mean great things for the rest of humankind through all history. 2 or 3 attempts or 2 or 3 mocking suggestions, come down off your cross. Oh, and that's a viable option for you as the Son of God, and you don't do it. It's amazing self-discipline motivated by love. In here, in this brutal text, we see 2 behaviors that if we as human beings, if we as dads, can move in this direction and behave this way, we will begin to live lives that those around us can be so proud of us, and lives that don't inflict damage or scars, the sorts of things that we regret. The first place that we see it, some mature forms of pride, is in the verse that I flagged earlier. A certain man from Cyrene, Simon, the father of Alexander and Rufus, identified this way for this reason. Mark is writing his book, Mark, in the city of Rome in about AD 70, about 30, 40 years after the events he's describing happened, Jesus' crucifixion. And in the town, the city of Rome, in the church, it makes sense, a very viable theory is that in the church, when they meet and they're reading the book that Mark wrote, and they are reading it because most people are illiterate and there's not Bibles on every shelf, there's a handful of these scrolls being copied, and they read it in the church, and they get to this point in the Roman church, and they say, a certain man from Cyrene, Simon, the father of Alexander and Rufus, every head in that church turns to look at Alexander and Rufus, who are sitting in the church, beaming with pride because their dad was part of that story. Their dad had a certain proximity to Jesus. Their dad, you might say, helped Jesus, well, you could say, helped him carry his cross. Now that has some figurative, expansive language that hints at, but literally, he helps Jesus carry his cross. There is a more mature pride, more mature than possession, performance, or position, that has to do with proximity, has to do with how close you are to Jesus, how much you're invested in his mission. And when people around you, when your children look at you, and they look for ways to be proud of you, will they see this? Will there be a story shared about something that God did at Prairie Alliance Church, or something that God did for reconciliation, or something that God did for your town to win an award, or some place that God planted a church, or somebody who was miraculously healed, and you will have your children hear that story and say, my dad was there. That's the pride of proximity, and it's significant. You go back in your family tree and you find some places where your ancestors were. I've got a couple interesting ancestors. John Inkster was pretty formative in some of the settlement of Manitoba, and there's some good things emerging about him and some of the ways that he treated Indigenous people that other people of his era didn't. And it makes me proud, although there's the story still unfolding, so you are sort of worried about what they might find out tomorrow. But as of now, a pretty good story. My dad, when he was working at Fort Garry Museum in the 70s, I think, maybe late 60s, as a university student, met Prince Charles. It's kind of neat. Proximity. Now, not that I'm like a huge Prince Charles fan, but it's a good story, and I'm a little bit proud. Maybe that's the wrong word, but you're getting a sense, I hope, of what proximity pride is like. And the greater the person that your dad or your mom or whoever was close to, the greater your pride. The more significant the story was that they were part of, the greater your pride, the more mature it is. And so we have a sense of what it must have felt like for Alexander and Rufus sitting there in that church going, yeah, my dad was there. He was a part of that. We're moving to a more mature pride, but we're still not at a place where there's an absence of regret. Because there's certainly something that Simon would have done along the way. Maybe Simon never became a believer. Maybe Alexander and Rufus did. Maybe Simon just kind of didn't buy it and lived his life an entirely different way. We don't know. But we're not yet at the most mature form of pride. That comes a little bit later in the text. We've talked about possession pride. We've talked about position. We've talked about performance, immature forms, stuff that we can regret. We move to proximity, which is a little more mature, and now we get to like the ultimate pride, and we're going to call this passion pride. Now, we're not talking about passion as in, oh, I'm really into this, I'm passionate about this. We're talking about passion specifically in the passion of Jesus. Passion being the word that refers to his trial and crucifixion. We're talking about passion pride, where Jesus goes up on the cross, where he stands in the gap for you and I, where he takes pain for us, where he's humiliated, where he fights a fight that we can't fight, where he, on our behalf, protects us. That's passion pride. And that's the call of a father for his children. And that's Jesus showing us the example on the cross. In fact, when Jesus earlier says to his disciples, take up your cross and follow me, he's giving us a path towards a life that we can live where people will be proud of us and where we won't have any regrets. He's calling us to what I'm going to call a cruciform life. That's a crucial concept for you to understand what that word means. Cruciform is sort of self-evident on the one hand. It means the form of the cross. So your life as a cruciform life takes the form of a cross. So people see the way that you are not putting yourself first, the way that instead of inflicting pain, you're absorbing pain, the way that you are allowing yourself to be humiliated a little bit for the good of others. And when people see that, if they had the vocabulary, they would say, oh, that takes the form of a cross. I can tell who his God is based on the way that his life is taking the form of the way his God's life took. He looks like his God. He's cruciform. And so we can narrow the gap between this amazing but brutal sacrifice on the cross that Jesus does for us, this version of cruciformity, and our own rather modest crosses that we bear by the concept of being cruciform. To be cruciform, you just have to bear the cross in front of you. Doesn't have to be magnificent. Doesn't have to be even particularly impressive. Instead, in fact, in many cases, it won't be. Cruciform behavior for you might be really, really at this stage of life, a fairly normal thing that lots of men do. But the problem is you weren't mentored the right way or whatever it might be, and it seems like it's just an insurmountable task to help with the dishes or to be patient or to tuck your kids in or to not have a weekend to yourself just to be with the guys or whatever it might be. And that is your cross to bear. And if you refer to it that way, your significant other isn't going to be too happy about it. But inside, and that's okay, but inside you're like, this is what Jesus has laid in front of me. This is what it means to grow in humility and selflessness and to take pain upon myself for the good of others. Right now, as small as it might be, this is what it means for me to be cruciform. This is what it means for me to be like Jesus. So you do it. You don't compare it to the great saints, because if you do that, then you think your thing's no big deal. But it is a big deal. It's your cross. And it's what moves you towards being like Jesus, to being that cruciform person. And here's the deep truth that you need to get. Cruciform fatherhood is regret-free. You know this to be true. No matter which end of this you're sitting on, when you remember your dad, and you think about those things that you love and that you respect, you are thinking about cruciform things. Guaranteed. Now, whether dad did that intentionally or it just happened is irrelevant. They're cruciform things. But if you think of those things that cause damage to you, and those things that you know your dad regrets, or if you don't know it, that you hope he does or that he ought to, you are thinking of those things that are not cruciform. You're thinking of those places where he put himself first, where he inflicted pain on people, where he was proud instead of absorbing it in a Christ-like manner. Cruciform living is regret-free, which is a great theory. Who can do that? Well, we'll keep fleshing it out a little bit here. There's two things that help us move this a little bit closer to home here as we get close to the end of our time together. You can't actually live a fully cruciform life. You will fail. And there's a weird thing that happens when you follow Jesus and you get closer to him in proximity and passion, that you actually regret more. As you get closer to Jesus, as you become more like him, as the Spirit works in you, you become more sensitive. So something that might not have bothered you when you had the emotional intelligence of a block of wood, now as the Holy Spirit is shaping and molding you, and you've got some nerves where there just used to be calluses, you understand the damage that you've done. Now, some of you have a sense that this is how it will go. If you really follow Jesus, he's going to thaw you out. And that means you're going to become sensitized to some of the things that you've done wrong, places where you've hurt people. And so while you believe in the truth of Jesus, you don't want to go down that road because you can't handle the thawing out. And it's intimidating. It seems unfortunate in the sense, like the closer I get to Jesus, really the more regret I have. Well, Paul points us in this direction. He talks about his life pre-Christ, and he's proud, and he doesn't have really a sense of how much is missing. He says, I was exemplary. When it came to the law, I was flawless. Thought he was just fantastic. He follows Jesus for 25 years, and he says, I'm a chief of sinners. What's happened? Well, he's become sensitized to the things that he's done. And there's a fear that might happen to us. In our church, we often don't, in any church, we often don't think of it that way. We expect new people to come and just feel terrible. Be like, oh man, I didn't realize how bad I was. I didn't realize how horrible my life was. And then we want them to be holy like us. That's not actually the biblical paradigm. Somebody who's new to church should probably more or less be like, oh, I wasn't so bad. I was kind of living this life before. I mean, now I just drink a little less and I try not to swear a little harder and we give a little bit of money to the church, but I was more or less there already. And you're like, really? Oh, okay. And the people who've been in the church for a long time have a sense and a sensitivity to what God has done for them. So we can be scared that we're going to end up regretting a bunch, but here's the flip that saves you that way. Maybe you're familiar with some of the weekend experiences here or baptism processes where you work towards some inner healing. Jesus works with you towards inner healing. And if you're on the victim end of an experience, you're praying through it. You're thinking about the trauma, the physical abuse, the sexual abuse, the angry words that were spoken to you, that held you down, that damaged you, that hurt you. And at some point in that process, you're praying and you're asking Jesus with the cry of an abandoned child, Jesus, where were you? And then you wait, and the people around you are praying for you, and they show you where Jesus, you see where Jesus was in that moment. And you weren't abandoned, and he was close, and he was there. That's when you're the victim. It's tremendously healing. But what if you're the aggressor? What if you're the one who's full of regret? You're the one who was the one who squeezed the arm too hard and left the bruise. You're the one who gave the smack on the bottom that was way too hard that left a bruise. You're the one who screamed. You're the one who swore. You're the one who looks back at the damage that you've done. What do you do then when you're now holy and pure and you're so filled with regret about that? Well, you ask the same question. You let out the same heart cry. You say, Jesus, in that moment where I inflicted so much pain, where were you? And the answer, always and forever, will be, I was on the cross. I am on the cross. making sure that the pain that you inflicted will not last forever. It will be absorbed by me. Friends, you don't understand how deep the cross goes because you think of it as being forgiven for your sins, and you don't understand how big it is. It's not like I'm driving a car too fast and I hit some family's beloved dog. But they forgive me, they don't press charges, the judge is sympathetic, I don't have anything on my record, I'm clean, I'm forgiven. But the regret and the pain, the sadness, that family still suffers it, even if I don't think about it much. When I do, it's there. Yeah, but the cross goes deeper than me being forgiven. The cross makes that right. Now, in this lifetime, we can't understand that, and we live with our regrets, but the cross means that for eternity, the damage that you've done does not last. That it is separated as far as the east is from the west. So every abuser, every aggressor, every jerk, everybody who's filled with regret because of the cross knows that that pain will not last for eternity. You might know the good news of Jesus. Consider the better news of the Lamb who was slain before the foundation of the world, who can crisscross through time and take care of the things that you have screwed up. This is tremendously freeing. Now, if your head isn't screwed on right and your heart is twisted, it's freeing in the wrong way. Really? I can do whatever I want, and because of that cross, because of Jesus' sacrifice, he actually already took that pain, and so somebody might have to live with it for 40 or 50 years, but like for eternity, they're off the hook and I'm off the hook. Woohoo! Oh my goodness, you do not understand, and you're missing something, because Jesus on the cross and the depth of our understanding of what that means makes us love him more than anything or anyone. And so the lure of position, the lure of possession, the lure of performance is replaced by the desire for proximity. And when we move close to him, then we might become like him. And then our cruciform life, blessing the people around us, minimizing our regrets, and ultimately erasing the pain that we've inflicted from human history, is a remarkable, magnificent feat that our Savior performed when he was nailed on that cross. Don't you love him? Don't you want to give your life to him? Don't you want his heart? Yeah, you do. More than anything. So tell him. Let's sing together. Grace and peace, everyone.
Brand new, your blood speaks over me, and your spirit seals the promise I've received. But your presence, Lord, unlocks a desperate need. Oh, I want your heart, I want your heart. I want your heart, show me your glory. I want your heart burning inside. I want your heart, show me your glory. I want your heart, I want your heart. Yeah. Castle and my capstone is secure. King can't come, I know that I am yours. But I long to be the tree, drinking from your shores. Oh, I want your heart, I want your heart. Oh, I want your heart, show me your glory. I want your heart burning inside. I want want your heart, show me your glory. I want your heart, I want your heart, I want your heart, show me your glory. I want your heart burning inside. I want your heart, show me your glory. I want your heart, I want your heart. Your glory, I am your heart, coming to life. I am your heart, I am your glory. I want your heart, I want your heart. I am your heart, I am your glory. I am your heart, coming to life. I am your heart, I am your glory. I want your heart, I want your heart. Love, love, love. Oh, I want your heart. I want your heart, love, love, love. Oh, I want your heart, I want your heart, love, love, love. Oh, I want your heart, I want your heart, love, love, love. Oh, I want your heart, I want your heart. I want your heart, show me your glory. I want your heart burning inside. I want your heart, show me your glory. I want your heart, I want your heart, I want your heart, show me your glory. I want your heart burning inside. I want your heart, show me your glory. I want your heart, I want your heart.